Rachel always had the last word, and somehow it became the only one that mattered to our parents. Even now, as I stood in the cramped kitchen of our suburban Raleigh home, chopping vegetables for the potato salad I was determined to bring to dinner, I could hear her laughter from the living room. It was that magnetic, effortless kind of laugh, the kind that fills a room and wraps itself around every ear. It belonged to her, Rachel, my stepsister, the golden child in the Gray family. Sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet, I'd wonder what would happen if I simply disappeared. Would anyone notice? Or would Rachel just slide into my seat at the dinner table, smile that perfect smile, and carry on as if I had never been there? The thought was painful, but it was also the quiet truth I'd learned to accept. I was the one who fixed things literally and figuratively, but I was rarely seen. At 24, I'd spent most of my life in the shadow of Rachel's easy charm. Growing up, every birthday, every school award, even the smallest scraped knee somehow circled back to her. Parents would fuss over her scraped elbows with tearful attention, while mine barely warranted a quick bandage. Teachers, neighbors, even relatives, they all seemed to have a soft spot for Rachel, the natural artist, the social butterfly. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the steady hand behind the scenes. Now, as I tossed the last of the celery and onions into the bowl, I thought about my job in HR. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to live alone in a small apartment, where I cherished quiet evenings with a book and the occasional cup of cheap coffee. My life was a patchwork of careful budgeting and missed pleasures, but it was mine. And yet, the tug of family loyalty kept me bound. Dad's back injury had worsened this year, and though he tried to hide it, I saw the lines of pain etched on his face. Without saying a word, I'd started transferring $300 a month anonymously to help cover their bills. It was a small gesture, but one I hoped would ease the weight of their worries. When Mom, or rather Diane, my stepmother, discovered the deposits, she smiled knowingly and praised Rachel for being a true provider. I bit my tongue, letting the quiet deception stand. Later that evening, Frank, my dad, was chatting with the neighbor over the fence. I heard him say, "We're lucky Rachel's so thoughtful. Alyssa's good with fixing things, I guess." The words stung more than I cared to admit. It was true, I was the fixer, but fixers rarely got thanks. I moved to the sink to wash the dishes alone, the clinking of plates filling the silence. From the living room, Rachel's voice floated to me, light and teasing. "Alyssa's like our live-in handyman." The room seemed to agree without a word. I smiled, but inside, the ache of invisibility deepened. That night, as I slipped into bed in my worn sneakers, my mind churned with the quiet truths of my life. Sometimes, the loudest voices belonged not to those who shouted, but to those who were simply seen. In this life, I thought, rough days can weigh you down, but there's always room for grace if we remember to care for each other. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to remind them that I was here too. I was covering their electricity bills while Rachel lit vanilla-scented candles for her baths. That thought echoed through my mind late one Sunday night as I walked up the steps to my apartment, the fabric of my thrifted blazer chafing my wrist. In my world, every dollar had to stretch, and even so, I felt it slipping away, never enough for what the family seemed to need, or what they never noticed was missing. My apartment was smaller than most people's living rooms, practical and plain. The couch was secondhand. The lamp I'd found by the curb flickered if I turned it too quickly. But I made it work, budgeting every cent. Across town, Rachel's bedroom was a swirl of pastel art supplies, paint-stained smocks, and custom sketchbooks. Diane liked to say it was a sign of her creative soul. I wondered sometimes if a soul could be measured in the number of colored pencils you owned. Back when I started quietly transferring $1,000 a month to my parents' account, I told myself it was just until Dad got steady work again. That was nearly a year ago. Since then, I'd cut out every small comfort. No more lunches from the deli near work, no more Ubers on rainy days, and when the reminder for my dental cleaning popped up, I just pressed dismiss. I told myself it didn't matter. It wasn't forever. Loyalty, I believed, sometimes meant putting yourself last. Logan, my boyfriend, started noticing the changes before I did. He'd come over after his shift at the bookstore, bringing takeout or sometimes just a look of concern. "You barely eat, Alyssa. And you look tired, like really tired," he said one evening, holding my hand across the chipped Formica table. I shrugged it off, joked about the long hours at work, but he saw through it. "Why do your parents talk about Rachel like she runs a nonprofit?" he asked, eyebrows raised. I smiled and changed the subject. Some things felt too complicated to explain. Family gatherings were my cue to smile and blend in. Sunday dinners rotated between pot roast and pasta, Rachel always arriving last, arms full of new art projects for Diane and Frank to fawn over. My contributions, a homemade salad, a bag of groceries, were practical, expected, never worth a mention. Diane would link her arm through Rachel's during the prayer, and I'd watch the scene, feeling the invisible line between us grow deeper. Rachel's birthday that year was a catered affair. Silver chafing dishes, a cake shaped like an artist's palette, even a local singer for entertainment. My gift was a simple creativity journal and $40 in cash, folded discreetly into the card. Rachel smiled, said thank you, then set it aside as Uncle Rick announced, "Now, here's the real grown-up, Rachel." Always so mature for her age. Cousin Tara laughed. I managed a tight smile. No one noticed when I excused myself to the kitchen, pretending to check on the salad. The imbalance grew louder with each gathering. My phone buzzed with a notification, a grocery delivery receipt, marked completed. I peeked out from the kitchen as Diane beamed at Rachel, her voice raised so everyone could hear. "Thank you, sweetheart, for the surprise groceries. You always think of us." I stood frozen, the confirmation still open on my phone, the truth stuck in my throat. Later, as the party faded and people drifted outside, Logan found me at the bottom of the porch steps. He put his hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. "Are you okay being the invisible sibling?" he asked quietly. For a moment, I stared at my worn shoes, noticing the frayed laces and scuffed toes. I didn't answer right away. Life, I realized, is sometimes about the quiet roles we play, the ones that keep the lights on and the bills paid, even if nobody sees. I told myself there was dignity in that. But as Rachel posed in her matching pastel skirt set for birthday photos, and Diane laughed, holding her arm like a delicate link in the family chain, I wondered just how much longer I could pretend invisibility didn't hurt. Sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones you teach yourself in silence. And sometimes, what's silent isn't the same as what's fair. I gave everything I had left, and was told I gave nothing. July 4th dawned sticky and bright, a thick North Carolina summer pressing down on our old family house. The backyard smelled of cut grass and barbecue smoke. Red, white, and blue tablecloths fluttered on folding tables while lemonade pitchers sweated beside trays of pulled pork. I arrived late, clutching a thrift store picture frame, one of those faux ones with little chips at the corners, and an envelope with the only $50 I had to spare. My entire checking account held just $60. The rest had already disappeared into my parents' mortgage and utility payments, same as always. Rachel was radiant, posing for photos by the patio in a star-spangled sundress, her stack of presents wrapped in shining foil bows. Diane fussed with the cake, making sure each sparkler was perfect. I found a paper plate, scooped some beans and salad, and tried not to think about the sweat dampening my back or the way my sneakers pinched my feet. No one seemed to notice I hadn't brought a fancy gift. I watched as relatives circled Rachel, asking about her latest painting. Grandma Ellie pressed a kiss to her cheek. Uncle Rick slapped her on the back and said, "This one's the golden girl." I was used to it, used to being the one to refill the lemonade or clear the plastic cups when no one was looking. My hands shook a little as I tucked my envelope into the gift pile, next to boxes stamped with designer store logos. The present opening started just after the sparklers were passed out to the kids. Rachel beamed, making a show of each gift: a set of watercolor brushes from Diane and Frank, a new tablet from Grandma Ellie, a monogrammed weekender bag from Tara. Then came my turn. Frank picked up my card and read it out loud, voice booming over the hum of voices. $50? He said it as if he'd discovered a single penny. A couple of cousins giggled behind their hands. My cheeks flamed hot. That's it? I wanted to vanish. Instead, Frank turned to the crowd, all pride and bravado. "Well, it's okay. Rachel's the one sending us $5,000 a month anyway. I don't know what we'd do without her." The laughter faded. Something cold prickled up my spine. I glanced at Rachel. She fiddled with a ribbon on her lap and said nothing. Diane put her arm around her and nodded solemnly, as if this had always been the truth. No one looked at me except Logan, who watched from his seat, his brow furrowed with worry. I stared down at the paper plate on my knees, picking at a corner until the grease soaked through. My pulse thundered in my ears. For years, I'd let them believe what they wanted, let them give my sacrifices to someone else so long as the family was safe. But in that moment, something in me broke. "That money came from me," I said quietly. At first, I didn't think anyone had heard. Then Diane whipped her head around. "Don't lie to make yourself feel important," she snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. Frank just looked confused. Rachel glanced away. Grandma Ellie kept her eyes on her cake. I stood up, the plate clattering to the table. "I've been sending that money every month. For years." For a second, there was only the pop of a sparkler and the low hiss of the grill. Then someone coughed. Someone else muttered, "Just let it go, Alyssa." I couldn't. Not anymore. I gathered my bag and left the backyard, the shadows stretching long and blue. I walked past the line of glowing sparklers, children waving them in bright arcs against the dusk, laughter drifting up behind me. No one called my name. Sometimes, silence is the only answer a family knows how to give. And sometimes, it's enough to let you know you've truly disappeared. When I finally stopped giving, it wasn't the silence that scared me, it was how quiet my own life suddenly felt without guilt. For the first time in years, there was no anxious tallying of my bank account, no splitting of grocery money between myself and a family who never noticed what I gave up. My tiny apartment in Raleigh felt bigger, and I could actually taste the stir-fried vegetables I cooked for dinner, savoring each bite without worrying how much I had left to get through the week. It was August, thick with humidity, and my world shifted in subtle ways. I found myself sleeping better. The bags under my eyes faded, and the ever-present ache in my shoulders eased. There was a deep relief in knowing that every dollar I earned was, at last, mine to manage. For so long, my paycheck had felt like a passing train, here and gone before I could board. Now, the hush of my apartment in the evenings became a gentle kind of peace. I bought myself a vanilla-scented candle on sale and lit it after dinner, letting the sweet, calming scent swirl through the kitchen. It was a small thing, but it felt like a reclamation. Outside, life at the gray house spun in a different orbit. I imagined Frank in his recliner, the TV volume too loud, stacks of unpaid bills collecting on the end table. Diane's clipped phone calls to the utility company echoed in my memory. Even Rachel, usually floating above money troubles, must have noticed the shift. Still, the phone remained silent for almost 2 weeks. I half expected a knock at my door or an urgent text, but nothing came. The only sound was the soft hiss of my kettle and the muted city noises drifting up from the street. Then, suddenly, the storm broke. My phone lit up with call after call. First Dad, then Mom, then Rachel, then Dad again. I let each one roll to voicemail, listening to the messages pile up like leaves in a storm. There was a new tension in their voices. Frank sounded confused, his bravado replaced by something brittle. Diane's message was shorter, sharper. Alyssa, call home now. Rachel's voice, usually so buoyant, was small and unsure. Hey, Mom and Dad are kind of freaking out. Did something happen? They're saying the money didn't come. I don't know what to tell them. Finally, I called back. Dad answered on the second ring, breathless and impatient. Alyssa? There's a problem with the bank. The transfer, we didn't get it this month. Your mother's worried sick. I felt a strange calm as I sat down at my kitchen table, the vanilla candle flickering between us, the phone pressed to my ear. I stopped the payments, I said. No apology. No explanation. Just the plain truth. There was a pause. I could hear Diane in the background, talking loudly to someone, maybe Rachel, maybe herself. Frank's tone changed, confusion mixing with disbelief. But, Rachel said, she always told us. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. Rachel never sent you money. She let you believe it, but it was me. For years. Rachel got on the line, her voice wavering. Alyssa, I never sent anything, I swear. I never said I did, I don't know, I thought they knew. The admission hung in the air, awkward and heavy. There was no celebration, no gratitude, just the brittle sound of denial. Diane grabbed the phone, her words cutting. So what? You want us to applaud now? You want a parade because you helped your family? I let the question settle, feeling the ache of old wounds and the new boundaries I was fighting to protect. No, Mom, I said softly. I want truth. And I want space. I can't keep pretending this is normal. There was a long, cold silence. Then, a click as the call ended. For a moment, I just sat there, hands curled around my mug, the sweetness of vanilla lingering in the air. I felt sad and free and empty all at once. Days passed. The gray house was a flurry of activity. I heard from neighbors, from a stray comment on Facebook. Frank called his brother for a loan. Diane clipped more coupons, skipped a haircut, made calls late into the night. For years, I'd been the invisible raft holding them afloat, and now the water was rising. But I held my ground. Each night, I cooked simple meals for myself, learned the comfort of silence, and discovered that a life with boundaries could be quiet in all the right ways. It was late on a rainy Thursday when my phone rang again. This time, it was Grandma Ellie. Her voice was thin and trembling, older than I remembered. Sweetheart, she said, I just need to understand what happened. I know things are hard, but I never thought I'd see this day. Can we talk? I looked out my window, watching the rain streak down, and realized that for the first time, I could choose what came next. I could finally listen to myself. Sometimes you learn the difference between loneliness and peace by stepping away from the noise. And sometimes it's the quiet that teaches you how much your voice truly matters. I wasn't trying to punish them. I was trying to survive in a family that mistook my silence for agreement. That truth echoed in my mind as I stared at the Gray family's dining table, its varnish scratched and dull under the harsh February light. The room felt colder than I remembered, as if the heater couldn't quite keep up with the chill in the air, or maybe it was just the chill in our conversation. A few days earlier, Frank had called, his voice careful but strained. "We should talk, Alyssa. It's time we sorted this out." When Logan dropped me off, he squeezed my hand. "You don't owe them everything, you know," he whispered, then waited outside in the car, letting me walk up the drive alone. Inside, the house was different. The hall closet door hung crooked. The handle on the kitchen faucet wobbled. There was a whiteboard chore chart tacked to the fridge, written in Rachel's pretty script, but the boxes for pay utilities and do dishes were still blank. Rachel's art supplies, once spilling over the dining room hutch, were gone, replaced by a stack of bills and coupons. For the first time, it seemed, my absence was being felt. We sat around the table in silence, the only sound the faint ticking of the clock above the pantry. Frank cleared his throat, trying for warmth. "We're family. We always get through hard times together." Diane nodded, her lips pressed thin. Rachel fidgeted, her work uniform a little too crisp, her hair scraped back in a tight ponytail. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the nervous way she twisted her fingers in her lap. I took a breath, feeling my own resolve settle in. Here's what I need if I'm going to help again. I want public acknowledgement of what I've done. I want the same respect you give Rachel. And I want Rachel to contribute to the household, too. If I'm invisible, so is my support. I can't keep giving while you pretend I'm not here. Frank's face hardened. So you're going to blackmail your own family? Use money to get what you want. I met his eyes. It's not blackmail. It's boundaries. I have a right to be seen, to matter. You say we stick together, but you haven't stuck with me. Rachel let out a shaky sigh, her voice uncertain. I've never had a job like that, Alyssa. I'm not good with customers. Why do you want to make this so hard? I shook my head gently. I'm not making it hard. I'm making it real. It's time you stood on your own feet, Rachel. We all need to. There was a stunned silence. Then Diane pushed a piece of paper across the table. It was a job application for a print shop across town. Rachel's name was already filled in, her handwriting smaller than usual. I realized then that something in her had shifted, too. A week later, Rachel started her job at the print shop. Each morning, I'd hear about her struggles from Diane, how she missed her alarm, how customers were rude, how standing all day made her feet ache. But every 2 weeks, she handed over a check for $600 to help with the utilities. She complained, but she did it. I'd leave a sandwich for her on the counter on the days I visited, quietly rooting for her even when we barely spoke. One evening, as I stopped by to drop off groceries, I caught a glimpse of Rachel in her uniform. She stood at the kitchen sink, her eyes tired, but shining with something like pride. It was the first time I'd seen her truly wear the weight of responsibility. She glanced at me, a ghost of a smile flickering across her lips. I smiled back, letting the silence hold everything we couldn't say yet. It was late one night when my phone rang. Diane's voice was softer than I'd ever heard. Alyssa, it's not about the money anymore. We need you. Can you come over this Sunday? Just as you. Her words lingered, uncertain but sincere. I stared at the phone long after the call ended, thinking about Logan's quiet wisdom. Maybe they won't change unless you make it impossible not to. Maybe boundaries weren't just about pushing people away. They were about giving everyone a chance to step forward on their own. In the hush of my apartment, I realized I wasn't waiting for applause. I was waiting for honesty. And for the first time, I believed it might actually come. Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop speaking and wait. That was the lesson I'd carried for the past 2 years after the old patterns in our family cracked and, for the first time, real space had opened for something new. Now, on a quiet July 4th evening in 2024, I parked at the curb in front of the gray house, my heart oddly steady, not jittery like before. No flags or streamers fluttered from the porch this time. There were only a few paper lanterns swaying from the trees, the clink of lemonade pitchers, and the hum of easy conversation drifting over the fence. Logan reached across the center console and squeezed my hand. "Go," he said gently. "This time, it's your story too." I nodded, grateful for his faith in me, and we walked together through the front gate. Folding chairs ringed the backyard, simpler than years past. There was no mountain of presents, no parade of foil bows, just a long table draped in a blue checked cloth, bowls of potato salad, cold chicken, and lemonade beating with condensation in the heat. I spotted Frank and Diane by the grill. They looked older, somehow, Frank's hair grayer, Diane's hands moving a little slower as she set out paper plates. Rachel hovered nearby, her uniform traded for a simple cotton dress, quieter than I'd ever seen her. Family trickled in. Uncle Rick, still loud but softer at the edges. Cousin Tara, with her toddler in tow. Grandma Ellie, who squeezed my arm with a smile. The backyard felt smaller, more real, as if the absence of spectacle made more room for what mattered. I lingered at the edge, not quite sure where to stand. Logan guided me to an empty chair near the lemonade, and I busied myself pouring a glass for Grandma Ellie. She leaned close, her voice a whisper meant just for me. "You changed more than just this family, honey." I felt something gentle shift inside, a knot loosening, a wound mending quietly. As dusk settled, Frank called everyone together. For once, he didn't raise his voice for effect. Instead, he looked straight at me, his words slow and heavy with meaning. "Alyssa, I owe you a real apology. For a long time, I didn't see what you did for this family, how you held us together, even when we didn't deserve it. We misjudged the one who gave us the most." The silence that followed was not the cold void of old, but a respectful pause, letting his words sink in. Diane stepped beside him, her eyes glistening. "We took your strength as indifference. We were wrong. I know I never thanked you the way I should have. I'm sorry, sweetheart." She didn't reach for me. She let the apology hang, honest and unadorned. Rachel, standing by the porch rail, ran her hand along the peeling paint and spoke up, her voice small but clear. "I should have said something a long time ago. I knew the truth, but I let you carry it alone. That wasn't fair. I'm sorry, Alyssa." For the first time, her gaze met mine without flinching, and I could see she meant it. I didn't cry, though my throat ached. I just nodded, breathing in the humid night, letting the apologies settle in the space between us. There was a quiet relief, a softness where old wounds had hardened. I thought about all the years I'd wished for applause, for a parade of gratitude that would never come. Now I realized that sometimes silence means someone is finally listening. After dinner, Frank and Diane sat with me at the picnic table, a gentle hush falling over our small group. Frank cleared his throat. We want to start over if you're willing. Not asking you to fix everything, just maybe we can find a way to help each other. No more secrets, no more making you invisible. I smiled, a genuine warmth blooming in my chest. I can help, but it has to be on new terms. I'll send some support, $1,500 a month, no more, no less. And it's only for 1 year until things are truly stable. After that, we stand as equals, or not at all. Diane nodded. That's fair. More than fair. Logan slipped his hand into mine, steady as always. As the lanterns flickered on, he leaned close and murmured, "Next year, you want to host 4th of July at our place?" I laughed, the sound bubbling up unexpectedly light. Yeah, let's start a new kind of tradition. As the party wound down, I refilled Grandma Ellie's lemonade. She patted my hand and smiled. See? You built something better, Alyssa. Not just for them. For yourself, too. I looked around at the people I'd spent a lifetime trying to please and saw, at last, not perfection, not gratitude, but truth. It was enough. Sometimes, all a family needs is the chance to listen and the courage to change. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is forgive and begin again, this time on your own terms. As I watched my family gather under the gentle glow of paper lanterns, I realized that sometimes healing comes not from words, but from listening and learning to see each other with new eyes. I've learned that true love isn't measured by silent sacrifice, but by the courage to set boundaries and still keep your heart open. In the end, even imperfect families can change when honesty replaces old habits and we choose to show up for each other. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own journey, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Sometimes, the greatest gift we can give is simply letting others know they're not alone.